Thank you for joining us at the ever-improving No Soundbites Allowed podcast. My name is Michael Vasquez. We thank you for joining us in this adventure of describing the politics that go on in our nation on a personal and local level as often as possible, giving you, the audience, more than just 30 seconds to understand what's going on in our nation. We look forward to joining you as we go. Just sit back, enjoy the ride. Please remember, if you like the episodes, like it, share it, let other people know, and if you can, please donate, even if it's $2, even if it's $5, because it all makes a difference. We thank you, and here we go.
All right, and thank you everyone for joining us at the No Soundbites Allowed question and answer podcast. That's right. It's going to be with listening to everyone, and I see Kevin and Melanie and Stephen are all watching, and I'm very happy to speak with you all. I'm sure, Stephen, you're going to like some of the things I'm going to be talking about. And this is about your questions to me to let me know what's going on, because I do appreciate the fact that every single one of you are there listening with me and taking the time out to be here with me. By the way, guys, somebody type in, let me know if you're able to see hear all of the sound effects that I'm doing. I rearranged my system, so you should be able to hear the sound effects as I'm using them, and I hope you can. It's just too many wires. You try your best with that. But for this episode, it's focused on your questions, and I'm looking at that. If anyone wants to come on live and ask your question live so that we'll be able to see you as well, let me know, and I'll bring you on and I'll add you so you can ask your question. Otherwise, just type away your questions and I'll be happy to answer them. Now, until we get that, though, I did want to speak about a couple of different issues. I keep little notes here for myself as I go to be able to figure out what we're going to be talking about, because there's usually 1,001 things and I never get it to all. The first thing I want to talk about is the homeless event yesterday. If you haven't noticed, it's on my feed on Facebook. I will have a actual YouTube video of it set up later today, which is me speaking at the 9th annual SUNY Broome Homeless Awareness event to bring people and make people aware of homelessness and that it can happen to anyone at any point in time in our lives. And it does a lot. And it happened to me. I was about 24 at the time, and it was just a very difficult time in my life, sleeping on the streets, not having a job, not having food. I had 3 pairs of pants, 3 shirts and 2 pants that I lived out of in a bag that's smaller than most backpacks nowadays. And it was quite a trying time. Back in, I think it was about 92 was the year that I was in California, and it was a difficult time. And I go into it in my discussion. I was the featured speaker at the event. I was also interviewed by Fox 40 and WBNG here in the Binghamton, Broome County region. So people may have seen that. And it's important for people to know homelessness can happen to anyone at any time, and it affects us all. And it's something that we should be aware of, and I believe in it very strongly. It's not political. It was not a political event. It was just about how can we help people and to make people aware that it can happen to you. I've seen it happen to people who are 40. I've seen it happen to people in their teens. It happened to me in my 20s. It could happen to anyone at any time. And we need to be aware of that and help people. I believe very strongly in not feeding someone a fish, but teaching them to fish, to give them the help they need to be able to improve their lives. And if you give them that and they're trying, people always rise to the top and are able to take that little bit of help and improve their lives. So I believe in it very strongly. I was very thankful that I was asked to be able to speak at the event. I've spoken to Professor Doug Garnar, and he may be having me come back to speak more on that topic and that issue for the college. And I am very appreciative of that, because I do want that message to get out. More people need to hear about it. It's not all just about mental illness and drugs. There's a lot of reasons for homelessness, and there's a lot of ways we can help people, and it affects people very deeply. as it has affected me. So I definitely want to thank them for giving me that opportunity. If you haven't seen that video, please take the opportunity, check it out. It's on Facebook right now. It will be on YouTube. And give me your feedback on that. I love to hear about it. So that was one of the things I wanted to talk about, and I thought that was very important. So I thank them for that again. Now, besides that, and obviously the shooting down in Texas is a big issue. And I'm a very much a Second Amendment advocate, and I'll be getting into that in a little bit. I'm sure there's a couple of questions that'll be coming about that, and I'm looking for them. Please just type in your questions, and I'll get right to them as you bring them up. Obviously, there's the royal wedding that's going on right now, and quite honestly, I just don't care about it. I just don't. It's not an issue for me. I don't think it's important, but other people may, and if you do, I hope you're watching it. I wish them the best. A long marriage, many kids. I have nothing against the royal wedding. I hope Prince Harry is going to have a great lifetime with his wife, Meghan, and wish them the very best, but not a topic I'm really interested in. But if you want to ask questions about it, please do, and I'll be happy to answer your questions about that as best I can. I don't know a lot about that subject. It's just not something that interests me. But something that did interest me is, just switching up gears here, talking about the Han Solo movie. And I haven't seen it, and I won't. By the way, guys, just chime in. Someone send me a text. Let me know that you can hear me okay. I just want to make sure of that. And I'll actually send a message out right now asking about that as well, because I just want to make sure that everyone can hear what's going on here. I want to ask about I want to talk about the Han Solo movie. First of all, I do not support Disney. I do not. Hang on. I can't type and talk at the same time. It just throws me off. I don't support Disney. I saw The Last Jedi. I was insulted by it. I think it was horrible. And it just ruined Star Wars for me. It really did. I think Disney has gone the wrong way on that. Okay, good. I'm glad. Thank you, Heather, for letting me know. You guys can hear me. Always, always. Facebook Live always disconnects. All right. Sorry, guys. Facebook sometimes does that. I can't control when it cuts out like that. Please, I hope you're all still there with me. But I was talking about Disney, and I don't like what they've done. I don't like how they disrespect all of the longtime fans like myself. 50 years old now. I've been a lifetime fan of Star Wars. Seen all the movies up to Last Jedi. I'm not going to see anymore. I refuse. But the Solo movie came out about Han Solo, one of the most loved characters in Star Wars and probably movies overall. And Lando Calrissian is a great character. Everyone loves him. I've heard that in the new movie, Donald Glover does a great job with that. And here's a movie that stepped away, we thought, from the current trend in Disney movies to destroy all of the things that we loved about Star Wars because they wanted to have political messages in there. And I hate any movie that is a political message wrapped around a story. If you can have a story, a movie that has a political message in it, and that's fine. But when you have it the other way around, it's not entertaining. And that's the reason why we go to a movie. I mean, I deal with politics every day. When I watch a movie, I want to be entertained. I don't want a political message. Disney doesn't seem to understand that under Kathleen Kennedy. And so we get the political message, and a movie is inside that somewhere, and usually not a good movie. I can't stand that. I'm not going to give them my money. I'm never watching another Star Wars movie. I'm never going to pay for one because I just, that's my protest against what Disney and Kathleen Kennedy are doing. So when I'm looking through some of the reviews, the non-spoiler reviews so far about Solo, see if it's actually a good movie. It's had a lot of problems. And here comes Lando Calrissian, and they have to make this announcement that Lando Calrissian is a pansexual. Quite honestly, I don't care. Why are we being told this? The only thing they can gain by telling us about the sexuality of Lando Calrissian is disaffecting and segregating the audience. You're turning people away. And quite honest, and that's because the more we know, the less we can imagine. the less that we get to enjoy about this character. And people don't need to know. I mean, unless Lando Calrissian, as part of the plot, is in a sex scene with somebody or something, now that would make sense. Okay, tell us about his sexuality. Tell us what kind of character he is. Fantastic. And you can do that in the movie. That's what the movie's there for. If he has a sex scene and it's part of the plot, it's not gratuitous, okay, that makes sense. But if it isn't, who cares? Quite honestly, who cares? It doesn't move forward the story or the lore, and we don't care about that. The only reason why you would say that is you're trying to target an audience. You're trying to reach out to probably millennials that are saying, hey, we want you to know this is a PC movie. It's PC because Lando is pansexual. Who cares? Really, it's not a factor. It just like the whole PC movement about, well, we must have a leading woman in the movie, and we must have an African and or a black person and a Chinese or Asian person. Well, those aren't necessary for every single type of story that can be told. You can have a story that's all black characters, like or predominantly all black characters, like Black Panther, or you can have one that's people of all races, like a lot of movies. It doesn't matter. If you're telling the story, that's great. If you're telling politics, I can turn on C-SPAN every day and I get the same thing. I can turn on Fox News or, God help me, CNN, and I'll get that. You don't need the politics in the movie. And I disagree with that. I don't think that gets said enough. Take the politics out of movies. What is it with Hollywood? I understand they want to get a message across because they believe in it. And that's fantastic. But that's not what your job is. Their job is to entertain, to take people away from these issues. And if you really want to have a good story, then you can do both. You can tell the story and you can put in your message. What was it? It was the Little Dictator, which was done by Charlie Chaplin, was a great example of being able to do politics and do a story all at the same time. It's a fantastic movie. It does it well. The movie M is a great movie, telling a political message as well as telling a story all of its own at the same time. You can do this, but Hollywood seems to think that you can only do one or the other. Quite honestly, I don't need to know that Han Solo is a pansexual. It adds nothing to the story. And if anything, it detracts and takes away from the story and makes me upset. It just pisses me off because I don't need to know that. It's not important. It only serves to distract from the story and the character itself, in my opinion. You may disagree. Please let me know if you do. So I'm protesting the Solo movie and all of Star Wars going forward because I don't agree with what they've done. And I think they need to know that. My dollars. And there goes Facebook again. There we are. We're back again. Okay. I hate when Facebook does that. I hate that it cuts out like that. And I noticed that depending on when I'm doing these, I've done a couple of these Facebook Lives. I don't know. It seems like Facebook is listening to what I'm talking about, and they cut it on certain subjects every time. It pisses me off. But hopefully everyone's still there, and if not, you'll come back and you'll see it later. And please remember, this is about your questions, so just ask away, and I'll be happy to answer them. So I was talking about Lando. I talked a little bit about the homeless event where I was the featured speaker. I know there's a guy out there, Justin West, who has been bugging me for an entire week on Facebook and all media, screaming that he wants to ask me some kind of question about homelessness and wants to get my answer. And Justin, if you're out there, please, I've been waiting a week for you to give me an answer. Come on, give me your question, and then I'll answer it for you. But so moving forward from that. So I've talked a little bit about the royal wedding. I've talked a little bit about homelessness, that event, and the video that I have that's on Facebook talking about that. I also, and I'm looking at my notes here, wanted to talk about, and I'm going to get to the Texas shooting in a minute. Obviously, there was an election here just last week for the school board. Throughout New York State, we had our school board elections, and I hope everyone voted. I think it's very important. And I think the school board elections have become even more important Voters are critical. Your vote matters a lot. And the school board election is one of the greatest examples of that on the local level, because this is how our kids are going to be taught. What are they going to be taught? How are they going to be taught? What will the teachers be allowed to tell them? It is critical. We're talking about forming the future, where we get to have our kids. What are they going to learn? Do they learn about the Constitution? Do they learn about the fact that their vote matters? The Electoral College, how to be involved in that? Do they learn about how to balance a checkbook, how to write a check? I mean, these are all important things. School board elections are critical to all of this. They make a big difference. And, I think it's very important. I'm glad people did vote. And I'm glad that Dara Silberstein did not get elected. But, that's just my thought about that. And she lost. So I'm very happy. Hopefully you are too. So now let me also take a moment and go through, let's just get right to it and talk about Texas. As everyone knows, I am a very, very big Second Amendment advocate. Massive. Every time there's one of these events, and I talk to a lot of people who are also involved in Second Amendment advocacy. They are pro-Second Amendment. I've also talked to a lot of people who are anti-Second Amendment. And there are a lot of conversations that I have about this. And every time there's an incident, I see a spike in the people who, they hate guns. They hate firearms. They don't like the Second Amendment. And they want to take that right away from us, which is troubling, at the very least. Very troubling, in my opinion. You may think differently, and please let me know. Go ahead and ask away. But I think these events, these incidents are critical because they tell us why we need the Second Amendment. I think it is invaluable that we have the right to protect ourselves, both from the government and for bad people. These incidents prove that. Because in Texas, yesterday, what did we see? We saw that there's all the things that we're told are going to make us safe did not happen, and they failed, and they always fail. So as an example, one of the things that we are always told is, we have a gun-free zone. Almost every single shooting, I think it's like 98% of all shootings occur in gun-free zones. So that is obviously not working because the criminals, in fact, some of these shooters are targeting gun-free zones. That's horrible. That is insane that they are actually targeting people in gun-free zones. That's troubling. Okay, so the gun-free zone thing is not making anyone safer. It's just there to make people think they're safer. It's the illusion of safety, which people are happy to have and does nothing for them. It doesn't, in fact, make them safer. And that's a big deal. So that's a problem. And what about having access to the guns? They tell you that, if we just take away the guns, that no one will be able to use them, and so we'll be safe. Well, first of all, criminals don't follow the law by definition. Therefore, saying that you can't have a gun has never stopped. You can't steal. Murder's illegal. Criminals do that anyway. So do the criminally insane. So that is not making anyone safer. Just saying that, you can't have this gun, we ban this gun, doesn't make you safer. And we see that over and over again. Matter of fact, I believe it's about 90% of all of the shooting incidents we see, especially at school shootings, are with illegal firearms. So it's not making anyone safe by saying me, a law-abiding citizen, can't have this firearm because the criminal doesn't care. The criminal is more than happy to do it. Matter of fact, they're even happier if I don't have a firearm and they do have it, they're going to be at an advantage against us and use that on us. So that's a terrifying thought. But let's look at the Texas event. It's illegal for those who are under 18 to have a firearm. The kid's 17. So he broke that law. He had an illegal firearm. He couldn't own a firearm. So he got on a firearm. That was illegal. He got it. And then he took it to the school, which is a gun-free zone, and he used it there. And he attempted murder. Again, another crime. So These are all things that we're told if we have the law, we're going to be safe. And the fact is, we have the law and people aren't safe. It's not making you safer. I constantly have to say this, and I don't understand why, because we should get it by this point. You're not going to be safer just because somebody said there's a law. Criminals and the criminally insane don't follow this. How many times do we have to say that? Because it keeps happening over and over again. The kids breaking laws left and right. And let's say for some reason that we banned all shotguns because the kid was using a shotgun, not a rifle, which all the bans are set to ban semi-automatic rifles. So that misses all of the shotguns. And in fact, 55% of all shootings are done with handguns, not rifles, not shotguns, handguns. So, and he used a handgun, a .38, and a shotgun to commit this act of vile evil. And we have to say to ourselves, okay, so if you banned all the rifles, it still doesn't affect this kid in this incident. And there have been several incidents where shotguns were taken to schools and used over the last 40 years. So it's not unique. So even if you banned all of the AR-15s in the universe and somehow destroyed them all tomorrow, it wouldn't have stopped this event because it's a shotgun and a .38. The bans don't work because they target things and people just use something else. You know, it's insane. Again, this is why it's short-sighted and why bans don't work. The thing that you ban is not the thing that's actually going to protect you. So the kid used a .38 revolver and a shotgun. And you have to say to yourself, okay, so banning semi-automatic rifles doesn't help. Banning firearms doesn't help because you go and get it. But let's say that for some reason, all of that worked. He didn't bring it onto his school. He didn't have an illegal firearm. What did he have? He had pipe bombs. He had bombs. There's the thing. Evil finds a way. He didn't use a semi-automatic rifle, which is not an assault weapon. But he didn't use that. He had a shotgun. He had a revolver, and he had pipe bombs. Those are illegal since 1934. So it's incredible. And Dan, oh, by the way, I did want to mention Miguel. Thank you for watching. Tom, thank you for watching. And Dan, thank you for watching as well. And Dan has a question. Dan Pokerek says, so buckets of rocks and doorstops. What? Yes. Oh, okay. What Dan is referencing in the bucket of rocks and doorstops is one of the proposals that has been made to protect our kids in schools and to be able to protect teachers from these school shootings. And I believe it was in Pennsylvania, the county, and I can look up which county it was. Their proposal was they armed all of the teachers with rocks so that they could throw rocks at the shooter to protect their kids and to use doorstops so that once they close the door, the shooters can't get in, which is stupid. It's as stupid. And I'm being honest here. Okay. It's stupid. It's not even just a bad idea. It's a stupid idea because, okay, you have the doorstops. That's assuming that, like this case, like in many cases, you're not having students going from class to class in between classes. Okay. Sure. Once you have the doors closed, you're in a classroom and you put in the doorstop. Maybe that works. God help you if there's a fire or a fire drill. Obviously, you have to take those off. And again, shooters know about this stuff. These school shooters, they go to these schools. They know when is the time that people are in the largest concentration. So your doorstops only works if someone is going in while everyone's in the classes and not in between the classes or leaving the school or coming into the school. So it's a limited answer. And, doorstops are not impregnable. So that's not an answer. And it has its flaws. Is it part of the solution? Maybe, but it's not the answer. And as for a bucket of rocks, really? You want to throw a rock against the kid who's using a pipe bomb? Oh yeah, that's going to protect you. It's a pipe bomb. It's a bomb. You're going to protect yourself against bombs with a rock. You're going to protect yourself against a shotgun with a rock. Could it happen? Sure. If your name is David and you're going up against Goliath, okay, rocks work. But other than that, I really don't think that's the effective answer. What if the kid's in further distance and you can throw a rock? Seriously. I mean, that's as simple as it is. You know, he's further away than you can actually throw the rock. What if the rock doesn't hit him? What if the rock hits him and doesn't do anything? I mean, you know, how big of a rock are we talking about? You're going to throw a brick at him? Well, not many people can throw a brick really well and very far. It's mindless. It's stupid. So thank you, Dan, for bringing up that question and that comment. I disagree with that. And it highlights the idiocy that we're putting. We're the anti-Second Amendment. And mind you, I love their passion. I love the fact that they're actually trying to find solutions that don't involve firearms. But the answer is we are in a world where firearms exist. You can't wish them away. You can't not look at them and say, hey, that's not an answer. There are no firearms, so we're just not going to have one. No, it's a reality. And pipe bombs exist, and shotguns, and revolvers. All of this exists. So we have to say to ourselves, quite honestly, we need something to protect the kids and teachers and everyone. And the answer is you fight fire with fire. You have a good person with a firearm versus a bad one. And we've seen this in several events. After the Parkland shooting, there was the other event which was in Pennsylvania, I believe, where we had the police officer who stopped the shooter. 2 people were shot, and then the shooter was stopped. We saw here that in Texas, this kid was being confronted by an armed resource officer, and then other officers came immediately and also engaged him. That helped to stop. If nothing else, one, he's engaging fire not on defenseless students, but an armed officer. So students have a chance to get away. There's one reason why it's a good thing. Second thing, if the officer is able to stop him, there's someone there immediately that can actually take him out. And that, in many cases we've seen, has saved lives because that person is stopped. And that's a good thing. And it's a deterrent going forward in the future that, hey, you could be shot. You can be killed. You know, if you're a shooter coming into a school, you can be killed. And that's a good thing because I don't agree with, and it's a great question that comes up sometimes is, well, what about having metal detectors? That's not a prevention. That is an early warning. Essentially, what's going to happen is I go up, the alarms go off, and you know what? It's the Matrix. Remember the original Matrix movie? What happened? They had a metal detector. Remember, it's Neo. Neo and Trinity are walking in to get Morpheus, who's held by the agents on the top floor of a secure federal building. Remember that scene? It's one of the most famous scenes of the movie. It's the hallway scene, and it's the major shootout. And what happened in that? There's a metal detector and a couple of guards. And they walk in, and all of a sudden it goes, the alarm, the metal detector goes off. Hey, I want to search you. And he opens up, and he's got nothing but a bunch of guns. Neo has a whole bunch of guns on him, and he starts shooting. That's your metal detector. That's what happens. It's not prevention. It is the warning. It tells you that this person is armed right now, and they're about to start shooting. It's the starting gun at a race. It's letting you know, there you go. We're in this incident. It started now. It didn't prevent anything, and it won't prevent anything. It doesn't prevent. It's a warning of now it's happening. That's not a benefit to anyone. That doesn't help save lives. That doesn't protect anyone. It just gives you a warning. It just sends the signal flare off saying, hey, it started. So that's another negative, and that's why I don't agree with that. Again, if we think about all these things that are being said and we take out the emotion And I understand people are passionate about this. Take out the emotion and think this through. Not just the short term, oh, that's what I want it to be, or that's what I feel it should be. And I could care less how people feel, because this isn't about our feelings. This is about saving lives. This is about protection. And I want people to understand that. It's not about how they feel. If you don't like firearms for whatever reason, it has no meaning in the discussion. How you feel about it is useless. What is important is to know, hey, this is the facts. Here are the facts. How do we protect someone? And you don't protect them by saying, well, we have a gun-free zone. Obviously, criminals don't listen to that, and we've seen that proven over and over and over again at every type of gun-free zone we have in this nation, and they consistently blow past that one. So it doesn't work. To say that we're going to ban a specific type of firearm doesn't work, because they just use a different type of firearm. If they don't use that firearm anyway, because they're breaking the law, they don't care. They're attempting to commit murder, which is a law, and in committing that, they're breaking the law. So why should they care about, oh, well, there's a law. I can't use a semi-automatic rifle because I got to follow that, even though I'm breaking the law to kill somebody. I mean, come on, let's think about this. Let's think about the logic here. So that's not it. And making life more difficult for law-abiding citizens to be able to somehow affect criminals is another thing that I find to be mind-boggling. It does not affect criminals by saying, you law-abiding person, the 99% of the people in the nation who have never broken the law or, other than taxes, but never used a firearm violently, you're going to have a worse, harder time for no reason, because some criminal who doesn't care about the law and is breaking the law, and several laws at that point, because they do that, we're going to make your life harder. That didn't make the life harder for the criminal. It doesn't stop them. We're looking at this the wrong way. And quite honestly, we need to look at this from the cause, because everything we're talking about and everything I just discussed about all these stupid ideas, whether it's rocks and or doorstops, whether it's gun-free zones, whether it's banning a specific type of firearm, all of these stupid things are missing the point. What causes a 17-year-old kid to think that the only answer in life is to go out and kill all of the other people in my school? There's your question. What takes a 14-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 17-year-old, even 20-year-olds, any school shooter, any shooter, and especially those in schools, what compels them to think that the only answer that they have in their life is to go out and kill a bunch of people and or die themselves? There's our problem. It's not the firearms. It's whatever is pushing these kids and giving them the thought that the only answer that they have left is to kill random people just because. Something is wrong. And it has nothing to do with a firearm. It has nothing to do with a pipe bomb. It has nothing to do with the type of firearm that's being used. It's you're choosing to kill random people, innocent people, for no reason. There is our problem. There is our problem. And if we don't resolve that, we will never resolve the end result. And that is absolutely important. That is critically important. That is the thing we should be, if we want to use our energies to try and help, the best answer we can go to is what is causing this? What is leading kids to that conclusion that their only answer is to kill someone? If we can figure out that, then we figure out what's going on with the school shootings, or at least and I'm sure there's so many different types of shootings that happen, mass shootings. So there's probably more than one answer, but if we can get to what is causing those general thoughts, especially that one thought, what is compelling a kid to think that they have no other answer than to kill innocents? If we can answer that, we will have an impact on school shootings and mass shootings in general. That is the thing we should be paying attention to. And at the same time, let's adequately protect our kids. Let's adequately protect ourselves by arming ourselves with qualified, trained individuals. I don't believe teachers should be the ones who would have the firearms. Not to say that they can't, but I'm saying that having an armed resource officer is a adequate answer. It is a response that is immediate and effective and helpful, and can stop a situation or minimize it far better than any other solution that's out there. Because every other solution I have ever heard only results in you're not doing anything to protect anyone, or, and sometimes, and you're doing nothing at all. Rocks is doing nothing at all. Doorstops, minimal response. It doesn't really address the issue. Metal detectors don't protect anyone. They don't. That's not their job. That's not what a metal detector does. It's an alarm. And Dan has another question, which I'm always happy to have. And remember, folks, this is your opportunity to ask me questions and to address any issue that you're thinking of. And Dan says, Dan Polkrek says, mass exodus in the 80s of mental institutions. Yes, one of the causes. And you're right, Dan. It's great to have that answer. And by the way, I'm going to use my sound effects now because I figured out how to use them. So I should use this every time I get that's a little louder than I thought it would be. So I'm going to use that every time I get a question, it's the little inception sound. And then, yes, you're right. One of the factors is mental illness. We have a lot of people who are mentally ill. They were released in the 80s and again, just recently here, 2-3 years ago in New York State in particular, we had a lot of those who have mental illness that were released out into the general population. And some of those people went out and did a lot of things. Like there were incidents in New York City where a gentleman on the subway attacked a woman with a brick. We've seen them have knives and attack people just walking through the streets. And yes, there are some cases, I believe even in Binghamton, there was a guy with a shotgun. So is that a factor? Yes. But here's the thing, Dan, and for everyone, that doesn't address, even though we have a problem in releasing those who are mentally ill into the general population without adequate medication, without adequate supervision. We're just releasing the population. That is a factor that's causing concern, and we should address that. And I'm all for addressing and helping those with mental illness, especially those who are not capable of integrating with society because their illness is so extreme. I do believe we need to help those people, but that doesn't answer the question about, but we're not talking about 14-year-olds and 17-year-olds and 15-year-olds who are mentally, who are in mental illness institutions. These kids aren't in a mental institution and then released back into the general population of students. These are just students that, the kid in Texas, he was on the football team. Apparently, most people thought that he was a normal kid and didn't have any signs of mental illness. And I absolutely believe he's mentally ill. He's deranged. I believe he's mentally deranged as well as a criminal because, he came to the conclusion of killing people. That's not a normal thought process. It's illogical, to say the least. So, yeah, he has an illness. And no one caught it. But more directly, even if we had, say in New York State, we had kept all the mental illness institutions, let's say that across the nation we had that, and we were able to stop them. That doesn't affect any of the school shootings we've been talking about and that we've seen this year in 2018 alone. It wouldn't stop any of them. It doesn't apply. And that also goes to the fact, like I was saying before, there's not just one answer. Anyone who tries to tell you that there's just one answer to fix mass shootings or school shootings is lying to you. That is a fact. And I'm not going to tell you that I have the one answer because there is no one answer. I focus on, I'm not willing to trade my freedom for an illusion of safety. And that's a major factor, but it is not the factor. The fact that there are many things. There is something that's motivating school students, kids who are barely in their teens or just above, maybe 20 somethings, that are going out and giving them the thought that the only answer is to go out and kill random people, innocent people. That's a problem. But then we have the other mass shooters, like in Bernardino, California, who went out with, and they were terrorists, of course, but there's another mentality that says, hey, let's go around my coworkers and just shoot them all. What's going on with that? We used to call it going postal because we saw that a lot with postal officers. Guy went out with a knife and decapitated one of his coworkers. That was in Ohio approximately 4 years ago. We've seen a lot of that. What's making them decide to just lose their minds and go out and say, okay, I either got fired from a job or I have a bad job or I'm stressed out and I'm going to go kill everybody? What kind of leap of logic makes you do that? I don't understand that. How do you get to that place? Something is wrong. And I'd like to say that every single one of them was mentally deranged. And I do call them, and they are mentally deranged. But that's not an answer either. I mean, I'm being honest. It's not the answer. Just because I consider them, or even if we all consider them mentally deranged, doesn't help us, because something happened to give them that conclusion. So it's not just mental illness. A lot of it has to do with mental illness, and a lot of it may have to do with the drugs that we're giving to people who are mentally ill or considered mentally ill. And like a lot of the kids are on psychoactive drugs, which, not good. Psychoactive drugs, how many times you see the commercials on TV? Oh, take this because you're depressed or mildly depressed, and you take this drug, and don't worry, one of the side effects is you may have suicidal thoughts. What? Oh, it's one of the smoking drugs. To help you stop smoking, take this drug. And I forget their names. You take this drug and it'll help you to quit smoking, but, may have the effect of giving you suicidal thoughts. Really? Is that one of the factors? I mean, that may be a factor. Maybe a lot of these people, and we do know some of them, are on psychoactive drugs that have a side effect of suicide. And maybe it's that drug saying, oh, I'm going to kill myself. The best way to kill myself is kill everyone too. And then the cops will shoot me and then we'll all be dead. Maybe that's it. We do know that the guy in Texas, that shooter, and I'll never mention their name because I don't want to glorify them. And I don't think we ever should. I don't think we should show their faces. I don't think we should give their names out because that's a glorification that some of them look for. And yet another reason why some of these deranged people do this is to try and get some kind of instantaneous glory in this world of instantaneous everything. Yet another issue. Let's not glorify them. Let's not gratify them and give them anything. And instead, let's make them as nondescript as possible. And let's look at, is it the drugs that they're receiving? Is that giving them that mental image in their mind that they should go and commit suicide, and this is the way that they want to try and do that suicide? Is that a factor? I mean, these are all things we need to study. These are the things we need to really drill down and figure out. And someone should be. I mean, we've done studies to see how many shootings happen every year. The average is 20 mass shootings per year, every year for the last 40 years. 100 people die in those 20 mass shootings every year. Excuse me, I got my numbers reversed. And this is by Professor James Allen Fox out of Northeast University. He did a study on this, and actually it's the other way around. There's 100 incidents with 20 people shot and killed every year for the last 40 years. So it's insane. It's insane. But we really need to, if we can figure out how many people are being shot every year, if we can figure out, and we know, handguns are 55% of all shootings occur with a handgun. We know that roughly 2% of all mass shootings are done with a long rifle or a semi-automatic rifle. Yes, that's actually the number. It's about 2%. It's ridiculous that we want to have all these bans on something that happens 2% of the time. It's not addressing the issue, quite honestly. If that's the case, we need to actually go back. If we can do all that data and we can figure out how many shootings happen and we have all these ways of classifying all these shootings, Why can't we go back and say, and what caused it? What were these people doing in their lives before that shooting? Was it the medication they were on? Were they on medication? What are all the things that they have in common? What are the things that we're seeing that lead them to this moment to say, hey, I have no other option in life at this moment than to go out and just kill a bunch of random people? Let's figure out what gets them to that moment when they ask themselves that question. If we can figure out what brings them to get to that thought process and say, hey, what's going on? At that moment, we have an answer to try and stop it and to save lives. Really, honestly, not an illusion, but really honestly save lives. So that's a lot on Second Amendment, on the shooting and mass shootings out there. Give me a second, folks. Like I said, it's a very big deal to me. I'm very passionate about this issue because it affects so many of us. It affects so many of us. I don't know. It's the thing we need to spend our time figuring out. We really do. Bear with me a moment. I just want to take a second here, and because I've been talking a lot, this about 40, 50 minutes now. Speaking done, I want to take a quick little break. You should be able to hear a musical break. It'll be about a minute and a half, and you'll still see me, and I'll still be here, and I'm still here for your questions. So bear with me 1 second. Oops, I screwed that up. Bumped into the music there. I was just sending out a note, and you'll see it in a second here. Give me a second. There was supposed to be music playing while I was doing all this. Okay. Actually, let me put it back. There we go. Okay, everyone, I'm back, and I hope you enjoyed the musical interlude, even though I screwed it up a little bit in there. I just wanted to type in a couple of notes and speak with everyone. I should also mention that upcoming a little bit later today, I'll be doing a podcast with the SUNY Broome Republicans, which is one of the other organizations I work with. And we're going to be having our exclusive interview with State Senator Fred Akshar. It was a great event. I got to speak with him, and we had 25 minutes of exclusive time to speak with the state senator. It's the second time that he's been on exclusively with the SUNY Broome Republicans, speaking to many of the students out there and addressing some of their concerns and some of the things they can look forward to that he's working on for them, as well as we addressed some things that he's doing for the community in total, for all of Broome County and all of New York, some of the ideas he's pushing to try and help us. And I think you'll find it quite interesting, and that'll be on the SUNY Broome Republicans podcast. We'll be taping that later today, and it'll come out late today as well. And I think people will enjoy that a lot. So we'll be happy to have that out there. And I do want to say again, I appreciate and I thank you, every single one of you, for listening in and checking out the show, for being here and asking your questions, just being involved in the process. I appreciate it. That's why I dedicate so much time to all of these things, is because of you. And I do thank you all for that, because you matter to me. And this matters to me. And I think it's important that we have these kind of conversations. Let me see. Is there any other? I'm always here for questions, so please do ask away. That's the point of this Facebook Live, is to answer your questions, like those from Dan Pokorak, who I thank a lot. And folks, he's been on the show before. I've had a lot of conversations with Dan. He is fantastic to talk to. Fantastic. We agree on some things and a lot of things we don't, but I always appreciate every conversation we have. So I thank you for that, Dan. And I see Jeff has joined us as well. Hey, Jeff. You just missed me talking about the shooting down in Texas and the Second Amendment. I know that's an issue you're very interested in. I hope Stephen Altstadt, that you got to hear that as well and how we addressed all of that. It was a pretty long part of the segment. I probably was on there about 15 minutes just on that, if not more. And I'm more than happy to talk about more specific thoughts on that as well. Because hopefully, my goal, one of my thoughts on this is, I hope in being able to speak about this and to address this honestly, without emotion, but honestly talking about how do we resolve this, how do we fix this, I hope that someone gets to hear it, or it gets forwarded to someone, or it makes someone, a light bulb go off somewhere and say, hey, I have this idea. This can work. This can make it safer for everyone. And I hope we can do that. I hope that's what happens, so that we get the answer. But if we're not having honest conversations with ourselves, if we're not having honest conversations with everyone and saying, hey, let's talk about this, not how we feel about it, but let's talk about what it is and what we can do about it, that gets us to the answer. And if we can get to that answer, I'm happy, because that's what I'm here for. That's what I hope is one of the results of me doing this, is not only making people aware of things and different ways that you may not hear in 30 seconds on Soundbites, on the news media, or in a pundit or a meme that comes out there, which lose context and don't answer things. Rather than that, I want to make sure that we can actually have the conversation and get a result. And Jeff, just so you know, one of the things I said, and I think it's very important, and I'll say it again, is the goal is to figure out what brings a 14-year-old, a 15, 17-year-old, what brings a kid in school to the conclusion that, hey, the only answer I have left is to go out to school and shoot everybody. What gets a kid to that thought? And if we can figure out that, then we can get to how do we stop that? And I think Dan was making a good point that perhaps medication is a factor, as well as doing more for those with mental illness in our nation. And I think Dan Pokorak brought that up. And if I understand his phrasing and where he was going with it, I think that's an important part of it as well. So I thank him for that. And so that's what I just wanted to catch you up there, Jeff. I also spoke a little bit about the horrible idea of Han Solo being pansexual, because it adds nothing to the mythos or the Star Wars. It's just a cash grab, and it segregates the community, and it takes down the entertainment value because it's there for politicking, and I don't like that. I also spoke about, and you probably heard about the upcoming exclusive interview with State Senator Fred Akshar. I talked a little bit about the royal wedding, and just to make sure, we've had about 50 minutes, so there's a lot of things. Oh, and here's one of the other things I wanted to talk about. And again, guys, I can talk about anything, any subject, bring it up, and I'll be happy to talk about it. I've been doing this political commentary for about 12 years, so there aren't a whole lot of subjects that I'm not familiar with or I don't follow on a daily basis. So I'll be happy to answer any question you may have. But I wanted to talk about corruption a little bit. Corruption in New York State. This is insane. We have a crazy state where we have so much corruption going on. It just boggles my mind. Hi, Dave. Dave's back. Dave Weston. I'm glad to see you here. So looking at our state and the corruption that's ongoing here, it's mind-bending that we see at so many levels corruption going on. And the local level, we're talking about a guy, Dan Livingston. He's running in. And speaking about just what we know is that, he broke the law in the last election. He committed election board fraud, and now he's running for an elected office. That's crazy. I don't understand how parties can say, yes, we want to accept that we want that to move forward. That's a problem. We're accepting that someone is breaking the law, and we're allowing that person to, and I mean actively, broke the law recently, not decades ago in their lifetime. They did it. I understand people go through phases of life, and there's lots of things they may or may not have done. I'm not questioning that. I'm talking about in an election campaign just 9 months ago, 10 months ago, broke the law for the mere purpose of winning an election. Something is wrong with that. That is insane. That's stupid. And we're going to allow that, and we're going to let that person run in another election. I have a problem with that. But it's just part of the process that we see that's going on in our state and that's going on in our nation right now, where corruption, and I'm just bringing up I'm looking for my notes on this to be a little more direct on it. But we're seeing that kind of corruption, and how can we ever expect that we're going to see improvements in our state when we have so much corruption? Sheldon Silver, 2 times he was convicted. He got convicted, he got overturned, he got convicted again. We have that. We have everyone surrounding Governor Andrew Cuomo has been investigated and or indicted and or convicted of corruption. And he's somehow supposed to be the angel, the only angel who's surrounded by corrupt people, and he has nothing to do with it. Come on, let's be honest. Is he corrupt? Yeah. You can't be surrounded by that much. That involves his daily operations every single day. Percoco, Silver, so many others, the Buffalo Billions. He's surrounded by all these people we've known for decades, and he's the only one who's not corrupt. Let's be honest with ourselves. And this is a guy that has the hands-on favorite to win and may be our next presidential candidate, because that's what he's really running for, is president, not governor. We all know that. So how can we allow this kind of corruption in our government? Why are we not addressing this? It's a serious, serious issue. And, we can talk more about that. But I just wanted to bring that up, that I think it's a serious issue. And it's something that we're seeing on the local level in Dan Livingston. We're seeing that on a larger scale with Governor Cuomo. And so that's a very big concern. I did want to also address in North Korea, there's the North Korea thing. So we can talk a little bit about that. A lot of people have asked, and we're looking at it, North Korea is pumping their chest right now, and they're saying they're not going to be in conversations. They're not going to speak about this. Is anyone really surprised? It's North Korea. Of course, they're going to say they don't want to talk, and they're suddenly backing out of the deal. They're not. They're really not. Every time we've had any kind of serious conversation with North Korea, we have had back and forth moments of them saying they're going to back out of the deal, that they're going to give up on the process, and then they go forward. It's a tactic. And usually every time they've done that, the world and all the leaders, we're talking about Clinton, we're talking about Bush, we're talking about Bush 2, we're talking about President Obama. So several decades now, every time that North Korea said, we give up on the peace process, we're not going to have a conversation anymore. And they've used that as a leverage tactic to get something. And then we wind up giving them money and food because they need both. And we give them things and they say, okay, well, we'll have this conversation again. So to hear that North Korea has been talking about how they're going to back out of the deal, it's to be expected. It's not a surprise. Of course they're going to say that. They say that, and then they try and say, but give us something and we'll come back to the conversation. They're looking for something. It's their poker game. This is their poker face. Well, we're going to back out of the deal. We're not going to talk to you anymore. We're not going to do this. And give us something, give us food, give us money, and we'll consider it. And then they come back to the table. It's part of their process. I think that they are running into a problem of, oh, it's not really working with President Trump because he's not reacting like the 4 presidents before him, maybe and more, and giving us stuff. He's not backing down. He's taking an entirely different approach. They don't know how to deal with that because it's the first time, at least in 4 presidents, if not more, where we're suddenly going, no, we're not going to do that game with you. We're not going to give you that dance. We're actually going to say, hey, you have to, if you're serious, do something. And now they've done several serious things. I mean, they've given us a bunch of prisoners. They've started the conversation with South Korea about peace and unification. That's fantastic. Does that continue? I don't know. But the fact is that they know that just saying, oh, we want to talk about peace and then backing away and getting bought out for it, it's not going to work. That's not going to work anymore. So they really have to take a serious look at their position right now. So I do want to thank, and I see that Donald's here, Donald Johnson. Welcome. I'm glad to see you're on the program. And please feel free to ask questions as I go through. I'm just talking until someone gives me a question, and I'll address that question directly. But I do believe that looking at Kim Jong-un and the mentality, the style of negotiation that North Korea goes through is consistently that they start the conversation, they back out of it, they ask for something, we give it to them, and then they come back to the conversation and try and work out a deal. That has been consistently what they've done, and it has worked for them. I'd be surprised if they didn't continue to do that because it's been working for them for at least 4 presidents, which includes Republicans and Democrats. It's working for them. Why wouldn't they keep doing it? I expect that they would. So I'm not surprised by that. Do I think it works? No. At the end of the day, I think it fails. It's not a good policy for them, and especially with the approach we're using now. Oh, we have another person, Julia Cornell. Thank you for being on. And I did say I was going to, and I want to give applause for everybody who's coming in. And Julia has a question about or a statement about the school shooting. And thank you for providing me with this. And I will, bear with me, folks, I'm going to read that out. So she says, as for the school shooting at school, I think one of the things we need to work on is how the parents can get help for the kids that are having medication. For the kids that are having medication, and it is not working, instead of expelling them or, it's a bigger comment. Okay. And it's a little bit more. Okay. Instead of expelling them or transferring them to BOCES or like school or a similar school that will be just used as a babysitter. One of the problems that I have personally seen is that it's not a threat now. Then they are turning away and saying we just need to work on it as parents. I think we need to look into ways to help our kids before it gets to the point in that child's life. Okay. And by the way, I apologize if I'm reading it badly. I don't have my glasses. They broke. So some of the small stuff is hard for me to see. So please bear with me with that. And Julia, by the way, you get the Inception. That's right. And I'm supposed to do that every time. I want to do that every time someone asks a question. And I thank you for bringing up this point. And yeah, you're right. That could be a factor in the schools. Maybe, and I think it goes into what I was saying before. We're not addressing the root cause. What's getting that kid to that point where he says, the only answer is kill everyone? Let's address that. How do we stop them from getting there? And how do we answer this? And is it our parents being abandoned? That's not a good answer. We don't need babysitters. We need kids to be able to address their issues and parents to address those issues and to support our community, the kids and parents, in getting those answers. So you're right. You're right, Julia, that we do need to address that. We need to help parents. And a lot of parents nowadays are on the wrong track. They're told, just medicate the kids or let the government handle it. And we need to address that. And we do need that. And I think it's a good point that, let's get those resources for the parents to identify these problems and to help them with this. I mean, we can't just give up on that. And parents are very much involved in this process. I think parents are very important to what's going on. So it is a great point, and it has an impact. And I thank you for bringing that up because, like I said, I can't think of everything. I'm not even trying because it's just beyond me. But I think the more all of us speak about this, and we look at all the different things that are going on, because there's a lot of things that are involved in this process that takes a kid from being a student to suddenly being a mass shooter. There's steps in there. We need to address those. And is it because kids are being babysat in schools instead of by government institutions? Is it because of the medications they're on? Is it because the parents are overwhelmed and don't have resources to address this? Is it that parents are reaching out and they're being denied the resources to address it? These are factors, and these are important. And if we don't get this right, we're going to see this grow. It's going to become more and more present. We have to address that. So that's a very big thing, and I'm very much interested in that. And so I thank you for bringing that up, because we need to know about these factors, and we need to address them. And it's very important. Matter of fact, that reminds me of something that I had looked at. And if you'll bear with me, folks, for 1 second, I just want to, actually, I'm going to put you all on a bit of a music interlude for a second. I just want to look at, I want to bring up something, and I need to find it for you so I can address that. So bear with me as I put in... All right, folks, thank you for holding on with me with that as I was just trying to get to something here. And as I was doing that, actually, Julia came back. She had another statement. So, yes, Julia, I will share a child's point of view in case it helps finding answers. Kids believe that they are bored or being left behind, bullied, not killed, or not liked. If they're being left behind, bullied, not liked. And she goes on to say, from not just their classmates, but also the teachers who we know are overwhelmed. Okay. I do not understand that. Just some things I have heard on this myself. Okay. Excuse me. So let me clarify, and thank you, Julia, for the comments and the insight here. Wow, come on, stupid. I love Facebook. What a wonderful technology system. Okay, so the thing about that, our teachers, one of the things is teachers are overwhelmed. That's what they say, that they are overwhelmed and they're not supported by our system, because with all of the mandates that they have and how they have to, the Common Core, stick to the material, rote memorization by students, get the material out and teach to the test instead of actually teaching. And when they have no time to actually pay attention to the students and deal with the students. That's when teachers, I have heard and I've seen reported, is that they're overwhelmed because they're trying to do a lot of things. Teach to the test, stick to the material that they've only been allowed to go to, and still try and address the actual needs of each of the students. That is a problem. And that's where they're getting overwhelmed, because they're stuck in this maze that doesn't really let them do their job of teaching and addressing the needs of the students. And so that's where they're coming to me and saying that they're overwhelmed. Now, the fact that you're bringing up the other thought, Julia, that a lot of kids say today that they're bored and they are feeling like they've been ignored and not being paid attention to, and that some of them are being bullied and they don't know how to deal with that. And part of that's because they don't know how to deal with social interactions. Kids today just don't know how to deal with people. And they're so involved in this electronic media, just like Facebook, social media and tweets, and everything's so instantaneous. And if you look around at any function where you have a lot of younger generation, the kids are constantly on some device. They're texting, they're watching YouTube videos, they're listening to podcasts. I mean, I'm knocking the very industry I work in, but I think it's worthwhile that at the times that they should be or have historically have been developing interpersonal relationships and learning how to deal with people. Because, when I was their age, there were none of these things. You had rotary phones, and you had to talk to people. And you went out to see if you wanted to talk to your friend, you went over to his house or you met him at the park. You had to deal with people, whether you liked them or not. You had to deal with them, and you dealt with them every day. And there was no escape from actually dealing with them. If you had a question, you had to ask someone directly, or very rarely you can get onto the phone and be able to call them about it. So there's that lack of connection, and we have an instantaneous, non-contextual communication going on. I mean, you can't understand context in a tweet. You can't. You can assume a context if you've had social interactions, but otherwise it's just a flat statement. You don't know how someone's coming across. There's no inflection in a text or a tweet. You don't know. So that means you're losing a certain aspect of interaction with people. And if you don't know how to do that, it gets very frustrating. And it makes it way easier for someone to bully someone because you don't know how to deal with it. And what can be considered bullying is gross. I mean, I've heard some of the things kids say they consider to be bullied by. And quite honestly, it's like, well, just go out and talk to this person. I mean, just deal with it. If some of it isn't as serious as the kids think it is, and in their world, it is very serious because they've never had that interaction. They don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to accept this. And God forbid if they don't, then they're going to wind up going into, if we don't figure that out and help them with this, they do maybe come to this conclusion. Maybe that's one of the factors that leads them to this, well, I'll kill myself, I'll kill everyone else. Or they go out into the workplace and they can't do well. And actually, Julia, you had reminded me of, I do recommend this, and I'll include this in the links. There was, I saw on YouTube, I constantly am reading and researching stuff. And so I saw a YouTube video by, it features Simon Sinek, Sinek. And it's The Millennial Question. So if you look up The Millennial Question and or Simon Sinek, Sinek, he has a wonderful discussion. It's about 20 minutes long, talking about the millennial generation and the 4 issues that they have. And I generally agree with his thought process here of why millennials are having such great difficulty in life, in jobs, in schools. And I think he hits a lot of nails on the head. That kids are, it's the lack of interaction, the lack of understanding of how to deal with people socially, the need and addiction to social media and instantaneous interactions with tweets and texts. the lack of guidance to an extent. These are all factors that come in and are causing them to have problems throughout their lives, not just in school, but after school when they get into the real world. This need for safe spaces. And I think we're making it worse. I think the more that we feed into this, we're going to coddle you, we're going to take care of you, without actually addressing these kids and dealing with their needs and their concerns, we go and we're going to have a problem. Because I swear, 4 years from now, maybe 5, either California or New York are going to make it a law that you're going to have safe spaces in jobs. I truly believe that's where we're going. And I think that's going to be absolutely horrendous. We have not allowed these kids to grow, to mature, because we're constantly coddling them. Let's protect them from something. Let's protect them. And I'm not talking about like the protection from the shootings, but protecting them from life. Anything that is unpleasant, anything that is difficult, anything that we went through in our lives that was uncomfortable. Let's protect them from all that. And let's make sure that they have, they can go to a safe space where no one can talk about something they don't like. And we can only talk about the things, the PC movement. We can only say things in a way that they like to hear. We can only talk about subjects that they want to hear about. I was watching Hannity, and I usually don't watch him, but I was watching him last night, and he had on Miss Areo, who was talking about asking for the permission for parents when they're changing a baby's diaper. She was actually arguing that you should ask the permission of the baby to change their diaper. I swear to God. It was on Hannity yesterday, and Miss Areu, I forget her name, and she's talking about this idea being proposed right now, that because of gender identity politics, which is crap, that we should, as adults as parents dealing with your babies, you should ask the baby for permission to change their diaper. I think it's idiocy. And the logic behind it is so that the baby will grow up and have a positive self-image. A positive self-image because you changed their diaper and asked for their permission. And actually, it wasn't Hannity. It was Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson had that conversation, I believe it was. Either way, it was Tucker. It was Tucker Carlson. And I really don't like him very much, his show, and I don't usually watch it, but I saw it for some reason yesterday, and I thought it was absolutely stupid. Absolutely stupid. We're talking about asking the baby for permission, and how is the baby supposed to communicate whether or not they approve of us changing their diaper, and what? I mean, there's an example of where we're going in the wrong direction. We're coddling and we're not listening to the reality. And it makes some people feel good about themselves to say, oh, look, see, I'm such a wonderful person. I asked my baby's permission to change their diaper. No, you're just being stupid. And it doesn't help. And it doesn't you're not having a positive interaction. You're just falling into this PC trap of following a mindset that someone else has told you to do that has no real value. What, human beings have been around, let's call it 25,000 years. It's probably more or less, depends on how you want to look at it, doesn't really matter. But as long as people have been alive, that's never been done and doesn't need to be done. It's not necessary. You want to show the child that to gain the trust of the child, you interact with the child, you love the child. That gives them trust. Asking a child whether you can change their diaper or not is just useless. But we have another. And thank you. I see Tina DeBella has joined us. And thank you for jumping in and being here with us. I do appreciate that. And Tina has a statement here, and she gets a little, yes, the Inception thing. I got to get used to it. I do have a lot of sound effects. I just don't use them as much as I would like to. So Tina says, all the headlines we're reading, Hang on, let me read this. And again, I don't have my glasses, so it's a little hard to read sometimes. Excuse me. So Tina says, all the headlines were reading he was on the football team. He was an honor student. This is about the Texas shooter, okay? And while he was on the football team in 2015, he was on the honor roll a year ago. And he is not now or recently. Hang on, she has a lot. Wow. Tina, you have a lot. I could have just put you on. If I knew you were there, I'd put you on so you could speak live. But let me read on. So why the change? Did anyone talk to him, talk about it to him to find out about it? Chances are information will come out that he was either picked on or on medication. And that does not give you a free pass to do this. He deserves the harshest punishment possible. But if you want, that got cut off. But then it goes on. Why are schools not secure like federal buildings or banks? Good question. They could be far, far more secure and better. That's part of what I was saying earlier. What I hear as good possible solutions for safety, 1 or 2 entrances into the school, which with metal detectors and armed guards at those entries. Clear backpacks, stop making schools targets. Okay. And then she goes on, Tina goes on to say, parents need to stop being their kids' friends and be a parent. Snoop, look at their phones, computers, go through their notebooks. You pay their bills, demand access, or don't pay those bills. Make sure to have at least one dinner a week around the table together. Talk to them about school, their week, what they think, your week. Talk to them about being kind to those that seem lonely. Actually connect with your kids without electronics. Okay. So in part, Tina, you're addressing some of the things that I was addressing there. And I do want to thank you, by the way, for just making a comment here, because I do appreciate all the comments that you guys provide. And so I do want to address this because some of the things you mentioned are things that I've mentioned already about the shooting. And in general, yes, we do need to make these buildings far, far more secure. Hang on. Facebook went crazy on me. Oh, I love Facebook. I love it when it drops out. Come on, Facebook. Come on. Oh, there we are. Okay. I was just finishing up. And I apologize to everyone. It's very interesting that Facebook, every so often, just likes to go and disconnect. And find it really odd that it disconnects on me on very specific conversations. It tends to do that a lot. I don't know why, but I was just mentioning. So, Tina, in answering your questions, so making the buildings more secure is a big deal. I don't think metal detectors. See, we're at the moment, all the discussion is that we're going to do these things independent of each other. That we're only going to have a metal detector. That we're only going to have 1 or 2 exits. That we're only going to have, and I think you're right. We have all of these things put together, and I think that's one of the key things is to make it secure. I hate Facebook. I love it. I've gone an entire hour without a single interruption, and suddenly I'm talking about solutions to shootings in this school shootings, and suddenly Facebook decides it wants to cut out on me and twice in a row in less than 2 minutes. That's funny. But anyway, yes, we need to combine all of the solutions to be able to get a secure building, although I think the 1 or 2 exits is a fire hazard and not really logical either. But minimize them. You don't need 1,000 ways to get in and out of the building. A handful, yes, and have them secured. Absolutely. I think that is a good idea, and I think that does make a big difference. I do believe that, as I had mentioned earlier, you may not have heard it, Tina, but earlier in the conversation I was saying, we need to have people actually address and look at and talk to these people, find out what brought them to this conclusion, and was that part of why he no longer is on the football team? Or was that a motivating factor? Was it because he's no longer on the honor roll? Or was that something else that caused him to lose both of those things? Are these factors? And if they are, what can we do about them? Was he on medication that's been causing all of him to lose all these things and then maybe feel bad about himself? And then that continues him down this path, especially with a medication that maybe says has suicidal tendencies as one of its side effects. And maybe that leads to it as well. So these are all factors, and we need to address that. So I agree with you, Tina. We need to have that conversation with him. He's alive, so let's have that conversation. He's going to be in jail for the rest of his life. So let's have that conversation consistently and drill down everything and find out what happened, so we can prevent this from happening, even if we can prevent it just once, or for one type, because there's a lot of types of things that lead to these mass shootings, it appears. Let's address that. And there was actually a study that was done, I believe, 2 years ago, and I forget the... No, I hate Facebook cutting off on me again. I'm still here. And I apologize. That's not me. I'm not even touching anything. It's just Facebook doing, I don't know what it's doing. Okay. So yeah, I do believe that's important, that we need to address that. And I do believe you're right. And just like I was saying, there's too much reliance on electronic devices and that feedback. And as I mentioned, Simon Sinek had gone on, there's a YouTube video from Simon Sinek, Sinek, who goes over the millennial question and the millennial problem and what's driving them. And I do advise looking it up. It's about 20-minute YouTube video where he has a very good, I don't agree with all of it, but he has a very good summation about this. And part of it is the fact that there's that instantaneous feedback that is the nature of social media, that is the nature of tweeting. And kids are so reliant on that, and it's so involved. And like Julia had been mentioning earlier, it's a form of babysitter nowadays. And we need to wean them out of that and get them into these social interactions. Let kids know how it is to have a conversation with someone, what it is to have a disagreement with someone, an argument with someone, and to resolve that and to have those conversations, to talk about their lives and their feelings with people, and to be able to share those thoughts, starting with their parents and their immediate family, and then growing out to their friends and to others, just like we did as kids. You know, we had the conversations with our parents, and then we talked with our schoolmates, and we talked to our friends, and we'd be outside and doing things with them. And that interaction altogether would result in us being fully developed, mature adults, which kids today are not. That's not entirely their fault. It's partially because of the environment they're being in, not completely, and I won't put it all there, but there's part of it. So I do want to make sure that we know it's one part of that process. And I think it's a big thing. And I truly believe that one of the things, you know what, we see it very often, that the far left, I really, that's the one thing I don't like about this Facebook Live, is it cuts out when it decides to. And it may be just something from Facebook programmed on certain keywords, or maybe it's programmed on amount of time that you're on. I don't know. But I do want to answer your question here, Tina. And I was about to say that I think, since we see very often that the far left and liberals and others very often like to do social experimentation on the public, that let's do this as here's an experiment I would like to see people do. How about we... Okay. I'm going to get this one last idea out, and then we'll end the Q&A, because it seems Facebook is really upset with me at this moment and keeps dropping me off. And I apologize for that. So the idea is, let's ban electronic devices for kids until they are 15. So anyone under the age of 15 can't use an electronic device. No cell phones, no electronic games online. That's it. And since Facebook is acting up, I just want to say this, and then I'm going to end this. We will, I'm sorry if you haven't been able to keep up, but yes, let's ban electronic devices for kids who are under the age of 15 and see if that has a positive impact, because there's no reason we need to necessarily have kids under the age of 15 with electronic devices, I would say. And Tina did mention, and I'm glad Dan is back. Thank you. Tina says, yeah, I don't know if it is my computer or FB. You continually cut out through your broadcast. I've seen in the last roughly 10 minutes here, it's cut out 4 or 5 times. So, okay. So rather than frustrate everyone else, because it's getting real frustrating for me, it's been an hour and a half. We went over time. I thank everyone who's been listening. I hope you get to see the whole thing through. I thank you, and I'll do it again next week. I love taking your questions. I apologize for Facebook cutting out on us for God knows what reason. But I do thank you. I hope everyone gets a chance to look this over in its fullness later on. And please always send your questions. I'm on Twitter at MVConsult. You can send it to info@vosconsult.com. That's my personal email. Yes. Or, of course, folks, you can reach me at Facebook itself. I thank you all. I thank you all a lot for being here. I wish you well. And I hope that everyone has a great day. Thank you.